Hello, my name is Brian Parham, and I am the founder of the Rock Dojo. And I'm so excited to be sitting down with my good friend Ann Weiss. And thank you so much, and welcome to Why Does Music Education Matter? It's so good to see you.
It is so good to see you.
So I first met Ann probably 2 years ago in singing for the vocally challenged at Artichoke Music, and I was blown away by your teaching. And I've I've had so much value studying from you. So I really wanted to get you on so we can do this interview. And so my first question for you is, how did you get started in music?
Oh, wow, that's one of my favorite questions to to be asked because I had a grandmother who, despite growing up extremely poor, managed to get her degree in classical piano, and was a phenomenal classical pianist, and was also just like a person that you just wanted to be around, whoever you were. She was elegant and incredibly funny and loved life and was prone to fits of giggling at any point and had this just smart and kind and loving and patient and funny and every single thing you'd ever want to be around. And her name was Elizabeth Weiss. My middle name is Elizabeth, so my name is Anne Elizabeth Weiss. I'm very proud of that connection. Um, and she was the daughter of Jewish Russian immigrants, and was poor all of her life, but always maintained this incredible joie de vivre and graciousness that was remarkable. And I, just wanted to do anything she was doing, of course. And so I was ready for piano lessons at 5. Um, and 5 is, you have to be really, really patient to try to teach a 5-year-old an instrument in most cases. And I was, a squirrely 5-year-old like most. Um, but that's when she got me started. And one of the things that was really amazing for me throughout it, but even more so looking back, besides the fact that she gave me chocolate after the end of every lesson. She always
That's
had
a smart
chocolate,
move. Never.
always had chocolate in her handbag. Yes, always. um, Never once in all of that time that she was teaching me, which was years, right? Um, was she ever impatient? Did she ever say something unkind? Did she say something? Was she ever externally frustrated? Or I would even bet it was so genuine. I don't think she was internally frustrated. Like she was a real teacher, which is somebody who enjoys helping somebody else learn, right? I mean, she loved music and she loved me and she loved teaching. And um, it was everything I needed to know as a grown up teacher, right? Those are you need the skills, and you need the patience, and you need the care. And the other thing that you need is sort of the attention to how a student learns best, I think. And she had all of those things. The one piece of missing information when I was growing up was nobody knew that I was visually impaired, including me. And because I wanted to please her so much because she was so loving and kind, she would, put music in front of me and she would point out all the difficult parts, right? And she would circle things and she would write things. And then she would want me to learn the piece, of course. And I wanted to learn the piece. And I really wanted to learn the piece to please her. So I would say, would you play it again? And would you play it again? And would you play it again? And I'd be staring at the music thinking I was learning something from looking at the sheet. But actually I was memorizing the sounds. And
Amazing.
that's how I learned to play.
Amazing.
Yeah.
That's actually something that I remember taking lessons with you. He's like, you would listen to anything, any vocal line, anything, and then just like in real time, boop, you're playing it as the vocalist is singing it. You're playing the next note perfectly in pitch on the piano, which always blew my mind. And the other, I mean, you bring up so many excellent points, and you touch on some of the things I wanted to talk to you about, actually, your philosophy as a teacher, but we're going to come back to that. One thing that you mentioned, and I think is so important, is you mentioned your grandmother, Elizabeth Weiss, and how she started playing piano and how she grew up poor, and how, music, even though she wasn't wealthy throughout, music in itself is a form of wealth. And I can tell you from my own childhood is I grew up poor. I didn't have access to music education. It wasn't until I was well, I tried picking up the guitar when I was, I don't know, like 18 years old, I think. I discovered, I was in college. I broke up with my longtime girlfriend and I watched Pink Floyd The Wall, and like everything changed for me. And I just listened to every Pink Floyd album and I just fell in love. And even to this day, I realize, oh my God, the sound that I'm chasing in my head is David Gilmour, the guitar player from Pink Floyd. And that's the thing that I'm still going for. But anyways, as for what music provides kids, especially disadvantaged kids, I can't even imagine what my life would be like today without music and the skills. And that's my big thing is the skills that music teaches, you know, the success skills that music teaches, but not even the success skills though, but the quality of life. And that's what I hear you saying about your grandmother.
Oh, amazing. Well, I think about, if you want to think about music as like a commodity isn't the word I'm looking for, because I'm not trying to monetize it. I'm trying to prioritize it, but as a form of connection, right? If you look at wealth as at connections as a form of wealth, music is one of the things that gives you the greatest amount of connection. I mean, when I was in Ethiopia adopting my daughter, I got to reconnect with a friend from college who is one of Ethiopia's most famous musicians. Right now,
Wow.
I didn't know he was going to be one of Ethiopia's most famous musicians, right? But he and I used to, we were connected through music at college, and then we were connected through our love of nature at college, and right, and the music, and then nature, and then friendship, and then I was in Ethiopia with literally, like, when he walked into the restaurant, everybody went quiet and started, like, internally bowing, like you could just see everybody was looking at him and going like, and they were looking at me and thinking like, how do you know this amazing man? And not only is he one of his name is Sleshi Damase, not only is he one of Ethiopia's most famous musicians, but he took, now this all ties back in, he took his love of nature, and he was like, what can I do to help Ethiopia, and Ethiopia's environment, because there had been so many changes in between when he left Ethiopia and when he came back. The city he'd grown up had been, oh, sorry, that's very loud. Excuse me. The city he had grown up in, all the trees had been used for firewood and etc. So the streets were dirty, and he sort of started with a broom, singing and a broom, and then all these kids wanted to come help him because he was singing and a broom, and then that turned into all of Africa is paying attention to his environmental programs with kids, and he is named after the most famous. He's called a different name now. He's named after the most famous character in one of his songs, which is an old man who loved the earth.
Wow.
Yeah, so
What an incredible story.
Right? So like, I know. So there I am. I've arrived in Ethiopia, and all of a sudden I'm connected to the entire music scene of Ethiopia from this one friendship, right? And all of a sudden other people are like, oh, you play music, would you like you want a gig in Ethiopia? Like, we can line you up with a gig. Like, it was right. I mean, it's amazing how far reaching music and sharing music can go, and so many musicians are about using music as a connection. I think the idea of sort of the snooty musician who's all about them, that's the sad musician. That's the musician without self-esteem, right? They're trying to be above. I think that that's much more rare than people who they just love music and they want to get around other people and play and share and connect,
Wow, what an incredible story and what an incredible value. I hadn't thought about that before. And that's one of the reasons I feel so spoiled, because I get to do these interviews and I get to think about things and see things in new ways. And I never thought about music as a form of wealth. If you think about wealth as a form of connection, that's such an amazing insight. And I'm going to chew on that and think about that. But that's one thing I found in my own life. And going back to my childhood, my brother actually, again, I grew up dirt poor. I didn't play music, but my brother is 10 years younger than me. And I started playing the guitar at like 18, and then I immediately quit because I got totally discouraged. I did had no teachers or no support. But my brother stuck with it. And he won actually an international competition when he was 12 or 13 years old with his band
Amazing.
Motionless in White. And he actually got to go. He won a record contract and got to go on tour with Ozfest, like the Ozfest tour. And that just opened up every door that you can imagine. And here's a kid from a poor family who now has every opportunity, tours all over the world, and has been doing it for like 20 years now. And the same thing with me is like, before I got really serious about the guitar again, it's I was, doing a job that I didn't love, that I wasn't passionate about. But once I reconnected with music, it opened every door. And I never thought about that as a form of connection. So that's amazing, Anne. Thank you so much. And I'm going to jump to question number 2 is what instruments do you play, and how has playing music shaped your life? And I think you talked a lot about this.
I did talk a lot about this, but well, I'm a vocalist, and I play piano and guitar and ukulele. And then other things, I wouldn't call it playing, I would call it futzing around. Like I can get away with sounding really good for like 1 or 2 songs, and then that's like the range of what I do. So I don't think the other stuff counts. Um, but what's really nice about playing a number of different instruments is I feel confident that if I wanted to learn another one, that I could just be like, okay, I'm going to apply what I know and take some lessons and look online, and now, like I'm interested in playing the trumpet someday. So at some point when I have some time, hopefully when the pandemic is over and I have a little time, I'm going to like take a couple lessons on trumpet and practice a little bit and see where it goes.
That's amazing, Anne. And well, you mentioned this earlier as one of the first things that you talked about. And it brings me to question number 3 is like, can you tell us about your philosophy as music as an educator?
Yes, I can. Um, so my philosophy is that if the student isn't learning, it's because the teacher has not figured out the the way the student learns best. So that if the student is, and I tell my students this, if the student is sort of failing or not progressing, it's not the student's fault. It's the teacher's fault. That's part of my philosophy. And part of the reason I say that to people is I want to take the heat off of them. Because often when people are learning, they feel self-conscious about the level that they're at. They feel like they should be better. They feel embarrassed when they're making mistakes. We don't grow up in a very like learning friendly culture. Some of us, I think that my daughter, who's in online kindergarten, is, I can't believe how wonderful her teacher is and how kind and non-judgmental. Like it's a very different environment, right? And yet my daughter's worried about being made fun of, even though she doesn't have that here at home and she doesn't have it in school. It's just like, I think part of it is culture and part of it is nature, that not wanting to stick out in a negative way, right? Or in your mind thinking, oh, I'm not good enough. So I don't have a student who doesn't give me a disclaimer before a lesson. I mean, even if they practiced every day, there's still some way that they're like, of course, this isn't going to be good, very good, because um, and so I tell people like whatever I think that will best set them at ease, because I think that people learn the best when they feel the most comfortable and when they're judging themselves the least. I even have something I do with students who put themselves down all the time, because I know that their brain is working against their ability to learn, where I have them set a jar with money on in reach and a jar that's empty, and every time they put themselves down internally or externally, they have to take like a couple coins from one jar and put it in the other jar, and then they have to give me that money. And sometimes it cures people of that like self-critical voice when they're trying to learn in a couple of weeks. And then of course, I don't tell them this, but of course I give them their money back. But anyway, so that's my philosophy. And sometimes it's led me down some really interesting paths. I worked with one young woman who had severe epilepsy all of her life, and so she was disabled, and really had a terribly hard time retaining really any information at all. Um, so I would sort of just try to see like Like what stuck at all, and what could we do to just sort of reinforce that every week and make it okay that we were reinforcing the same thing week after week after week after week? Because maybe what would take one person a day to learn or an hour to learn, maybe it would take her 3 months to learn. But the point was that she wanted to learn it. So who was I to judge how fast it would stick? I wasn't going to get frustrated with that. I was just in admiration that with this disability, she would come to lessons, she would come with a big smile on her face, she would come with her notebook and be like ready to learn. And I thought, what else do you need besides that? That's so great, you know? So I feel like it's incumbent upon the teacher to figure out how the student learns best. Yeah.
Thank you so much. That's a fantastic answer. And I agree with you. You know, as an educator, I'm thinking about some of the students that I have, and I've interviewed a lot of different educators, and it's so fascinating to see the different approaches. And I've experienced as a student, and I know as a vocal student of yours, how singing, there's something different with singing. I think even more so than the guitar,
So personal.
like the guitar, like I'm just like, and it could just be me, so I'm only one person, but as the guitar, you don't have that, like, but when you go to open your voice, I remember being your student and, being so terrified of not hitting the pitch, and you can hear when the pitches don't line up. So, and it's like, it's so shocking. So, man, and I just love your philosophy. Thank you so much for sharing that. And question number 4, what does music have to offer kids, especially during the pandemic?
Oh, wow. I think the question would be more like, is there anything that music wouldn't offer kids? I mean, um, you know, music skills are so phenomenally transferable, right? Um, they they give you another way to connect to other people. So besides just the music part of music, which is so wonderful and satisfying and joy provoking, and for most people, right? Um, and just how exciting it is to learn and be able to do songs that you love. Um, there's been so much science behind how many parts of the brain light up at once when you're playing and singing, and how great it is just for development. Um, those skills all by themselves, right, are are worth it. And then, especially if you have a good teacher who's kind to you and who's understanding and who's excited about the form, right, that can lead you, like we say, right down this path where even if you don't play music professionally, maybe after work you go to jam sessions, you develop friendships because you're playing music with people. Um, so, and then as kids, maybe you get into kid bands, maybe you go to school rock, maybe you go to rock dojo, maybe you go to, just to your friend's house and you like start up a thing. Maybe maybe you get into a doo-wop group. Maybe music leads you into dance because you love rhythm so much, and then rhythm leads you to want to learn drums, and then drums leads you into. I mean, it's like it's the great portal to everything to me, right?
And and the thing is, as a student of yours, I'm remembering how good singing feels. You leave, and that's something that I haven't touched on, is it's like when I do yoga in the morning, after a good stretch in yoga, you feel so
Mm.
loose and so vibrant. Well, singing does the same thing. Your soul expands after a
I
lesson.
I agree with you. Yep. There's actually something about the vibration of singing that I haven't read any of the studies, but there's also the studies about that, about how soothing that is, right? There's a reason that people sing to kids and that little babies make lots of noise and lots of sound and start to sing and start to hum and, all of those things. Um, it without the study stuff behind it, I can just tell you it's good for your soul. That's whether you're on key or you're off key. It's why people sing in the shower. It's why people sing when they're happy. It's why people sing at all events, right? At funerals, at weddings, at right. It's a very special thing that humans do, right? And that physical vibration in your body, it's really quite an amazing thing.
Wow. So, next question. How can parents integrate music education into the everyday lives of their children?
Yeah, it's especially with the pandemic, I think it's extra tough. Um, I'm very grateful to schools that have school programs, like Rock Dojo going into the schools, for instance, like Rock Dojo being at Artichoke Music, for instance, like Rock Dojo, right? All kinds of programs that are have been going up until the pandemic and that are still going in their own way. Um, when music is built into the schools, I just think that's so important. As you know, my 6-year-old has, all of a half hour of music a week online, and of course she's getting music all day long because I'm teaching here at home, and she's listening to me, and she's just also, she arrived with her own natural gifts around music. Um, but as a result of being around all this, right, her pitch is excellent. She can already sing harmony. Um, she can pick up on piano. She can, right? And she's got a great sense of humor. So she's mostly at 6. She's mostly playing the Addams Family on piano. Like anything funny that she can remember, she goes and tries to pick it out. Anyway, I think that being around it, right? It gives kids a leg up to more kinds of music and more kinds of skills. So if parents can manage to get into a program, a group program, if they don't have a lot of money, a school program, which is free, um, something like there's other programs around the city that offer low cost classes. And the thing is to try to find something where your kid is excited to go back. Like maybe the first few times you're not sure, but you want to find something that your kid is excited about. Normally, kids will, like grown-ups, feel shy and maybe a little self-conscious, maybe a little awkward, maybe frustrated if it's not at the right level for them. You want it to be something where they're really experiencing a lot of success, so that they want to continue. They're excited to see their teacher. They like their teacher. They're comfortable with their teacher or teachers. They like the songs. They like the music, right? So that kids are so busy. I can't believe my students, my young students, their school schedules are like they're. I'm amazed that they show up to class online. I'm like, wow, good for you. And they have a hard time finding time to practice. So I say, look, 5 minutes a day. Let's go for 5 minutes a day, right? Your folks will say to you, dinner's in 10 minutes. Why don't you go practice, right? Set up some kind of little schedule. Often 5 minutes turns into 10 minutes, and that turns into 20 minutes, and turns into 30 minutes, right? Leave your ukulele out on your bed. Leave your guitar hanging up on your wall. Don't put it in the case, right? Find ways to just grab it and play a little music in between things. It'll make your day better. And usually if they follow that, it leads to better and better and more playing and better skills and more enjoyment and more success.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I think for any student at any age getting started, the number one thing they can do to be successful at music is to build the habit. And I think to build the habit, just like you said, tie it to another habit that you do every day. Once you can do that, and if you can just get that we all know that 5 minutes is going to turn to 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And by the way, even 10 minutes every day over the course of a year, it leads to profound improvement.
It really does. It really does.
To have a lot of these results. But we also know that the 10 minutes, because like whatever you get better at becomes more fun. And so by doing it for 10 minutes a day, you're going to get better at it. You're going to have more fun, and that's going to lead to more time. And so that's why I think this is my philosophy as an educator. The number one thing for a student to do to be successful is to build that practice habit, attach it to another habit that they do on a daily basis.
Yeah, I think that's really good.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more, Ann. And so what skills should every musician focus on developing?
Oh. Well, pitch, rhythm. I think the pitch and rhythm are some of my highest. I think from my way of teaching, I tend to teach chords first. Now, I know not everybody does this, but it's so a kid or an adult can sit down and sing a song second or third lesson, right? If they want to do that the satisfaction of like, man, I'm already playing and singing a song, right? I think that that's really important. for the styles of music that I teach, especially. Now, if you're looking at classical music, if you're looking at jazz, right, then I think things like scales will be really important, although often, in my experience, that's not the most exciting thing to start off with. Um, but since that's not my focus, other teachers might have more exciting ways to jump on that bandwagon. Um, and then what I try to do is build theory in from an action perspective. Like, so you've learned your major chords, you've learned your minor chords. What's the difference between a major chord and a minor chord? Well, in order to learn that, we might have to learn something about a scale, right? So that might be a couple of lessons. Oh, we've learned a scale. So what's the first, third, and fifth note of that scale, right? It's building, just adding a little theory package so that it's not intimidating, but so that a student starts having the language and they're not stopped or intimidated later on when they sit down with a group and somebody's like, okay, we're going to the flat seven, or right, or we're in the pentatonic, like, so, since they're taking lessons anyway, I want them to have a purchase so that they can move forward in any direction.
That's something I remember at Artichoke Music is when it was one of the first times. I mean, I understand the major scale so well, but you literally sang it and walked the steps, and it was like for the first time I could see the pitch as I heard the pitch. And this is like when I was really getting, because like there also is a physical connection that happens when you sing with pitch. And so when you match those pitches for the first time, and then just seeing you were walking your feet. So this is a way that you were like visually demonstrating, music theory and tying it to the song that we were learning. And then when you did the half step, it was like you were singing the half step and then you did a small step with your foot. And it's like, it was like, oh, it was the perfect visual representation.
Oh, that's great.
Scale.
That's great.
And I'll never forget that. It was a really powerful moment where you can like feel and see and hear the major scale. So it was like, getting the information from like multiple viewpoints.
Directions. Yeah. Yeah. But that's what I try to do, because everybody learns differently, right? Some people are visual, some people are auditory. I'm a kinetic learner, auditory learner. I visual, right? Because I have visual problems, is never going to work for me. But that doesn't mean that I can't teach people who are visual learners, right? I can give them the material. I can teach them the skills. Yeah.
Fantastic. Are there any questions I haven't asked you about music education that I should have?
Oh boy, I think you've been pretty thorough. I mean, I the day after tomorrow, I might wake up and be like, and I guess one more motivation for parents. I am one of the best multitaskers I know. You take it to another level because you multitask and you're disciplined all at the same time, and you're super nice. Like, you're like, I don't know, you're like at another level. But
thank you, Anne.
But
I paid her to say that, by the way.
Yeah. He just slipped it right through the internet, right?
Right through the internet. Well,
yeah, right through. It was $1 bill, and he just. What I was going to say is I'm really, really great at multitasking without it being very stressful. And I really believe that that's because I learned music from a young age. Because for instance, when you're learning piano, all your fingers have to move independently, right? Your brain has to direct all of your fingers, right? You have to do rhythm at the same time. That's another part of your brain that has to work. I was singing. I was trying to read. Most people are reading something, right? So your eyes are working. Your sense of pitch is working. Your kinetic, your visual, your auditory, like every part of you is working at the same time and learning how to do things in concert, so to speak. And I think that is amazing for having lots of skills in lots of other departments of your life going forward. So even if you don't end up pursuing music, it may help you in all kinds of ways that you don't even know in other artistic or not artistic pursuits. Yeah.
So That's why I feel so, you talk about connection. I mean, I feel so blessed to be able to sit down right now on Zoom and have this conversation with you. And it's something I hadn't considered, the multitasking element of music. And I guess we really do live in an age where you have to be able to, I mean, we have so much coming at us at one time. And I've never considered that. It's such a, you brought up so many, things that I'm going to sit down after this and really think about. You talked about music as almost a form of wealth, in the sense of wealth as connection. You talked about, the benefits of the brain, and this last part about music as multitasking. From on a personal level, the thing that I would say about music, and if I were to ask that question, is the ability to sit your butt down. I think who's the famous producer that did like Michael Jackson and all
Oh
like
yeah, I know who you're
Quincy
talking
Jones.
about.
Quincy
Yes,
Jones, he
yes,
calls it
yes,
butt
yes.
power. It's
That's so
like, this is
funny.
the term for it.
Hey, I'm so sorry. Let me just check some. Speaking of multitasking, let me check something. Today is Wednesday. I'm so sorry. Just very briefly. Oh, we're fine. Okay, great, 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 good. Keep
Well,
going.
you know what, Anne? I think that's actually the perfect place. I was just going to say the butt power, the ability to sit down for however long it takes. That's the number one thing that music has taught me from the business standpoint. Now, I'm a very particular guy. Like, I do business and I do music, and those are the two things I do. And there's so much crossover, though. And the skills that I learned in music are the only things that make me succeed, because I have no other skills in business. But I got butt power. And butt power, what Quincy Jones talks about, is your ability to sit down and do the task. Whether you want to do it or not is irrelevant. In business, it's like whether you want to do it or not is
Right. Yeah,
irrelevant,
that's right.
right?
Yeah, yeah,
I don't want
that's
to do
right.
most of the stuff I have to do, but I know it's the stuff that I need to do in order. And so I think that music gives us that focus, that ability to dial in. But what's fascinating, what you're saying, is a whole another element to it. It's actually the ability to multitask, the ability to maybe juggle. And I saw this as a definition of like intelligence once. It's like your ability to like basically deal with multiple views of one subject at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah, that's right. Yep, that's right. And there's one. I'll just have to add one thing that might be the most important thing that I don't know that how much I focused on it in this interview, but um, I think every musician who travels this path, right? It's actually that ultimately all these things that we're doing come from that Zen moment that you get when you are in music and you are gone. You have gone into this place that is phenomenal and altering and deep and magical and wonderful, that is often visited as a child but hard to reach as an adult if you don't have a path in, right? And I feel like for me, right, that connection is part of it, but the music itself, going into that place, is is it's like without that I wouldn't, it would be like not having food or water, but delicious food and great water, right? Or friendship, right? It's something that makes life phenomenal and brings joy. And I feel like we are in a world that is so in need of joy and the direction of joy and the motivation of joy. And I feel like, for me anyway, business just doesn't do that, but music, right? Yeah, you neither, most people, right? Music does that, right? And it's the motivation and it's the connector. So I'll end my thoughts on that, I think. Yeah.
beautiful, beautiful. And I cannot forget to ask you, so where can people go to learn more about your work?
Okay. So my website is www.anneweiss.com, spelled ANNEWEISS. And unfortunately, you will see that I'm not gigging at the moment, like almost everybody else. But I will be again. That'll be happening. But I am teaching online, and I am teaching group classes through Artichoke Music still. And I'm doing some coaching, various kinds for people for various musical pursuits. And I'll return to producing, which I love doing. Me and Quincy were like that. No, just kidding. Um, And but yes, of course he influenced everybody, so he influenced me too. Um, and then I'll go back to touring and performing, and we'll see what if if I'll be Ajina's backing singer, or she'll be my drummer, or something will happen. I'm sure along those lines. There'll be a little mother daughter team in some way at some point.
She's gonna, I'm telling you, it's like, I already know this, but she's gonna rule the musical world in what, 10 years?
I think so. Yeah,
10 years.
I
The
think so.
world, watch out.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And Weiss, I wanna ask you to stick around for 1 second after I hit the record button, the stop record button. But thank you so much for your
What a
time.
pleasure. What a pleasure.
Incredible. So once again, that's www.nweiss.com, and I'll make sure that I put that in the description, really high up there, so people can learn more about your work. This has been absolutely incredible. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this today.
It's always a pleasure. Always a pleasure talking with you.